to me, some of the most interesting cards from the Major Arcana of the Tarot, number 0 and 1, and are called the Fool and the Magician, respectively. More specifically, what I find interesting is the relationship of these two cards to one another. Now, the Magician is associated with the phallic number 1. The card depicts a man with all of his tools laid out in front of him. He's standing tall, one arm raising a wand and the other pointing to the earth, upon which he firmly stands. He's very much on, in binary terms. Now, the Fool is off. The Fool is associated with the Yonic number 0. A dog nips at his heels, and the Fool seems completely unaware that he's about to walk off of a cliff. Now, assuming he does go over the cliff's edge, all of his belongings in his bag they would fall out and scatter themselves along the floor. He'd say, "Wow, I better be more careful," and he'd feel compelled to take a good look at his inventory by arranging his things on a table. Thus the Fool becomes the Magician, or 0 becomes 1, or off becomes on. The Fool, with his things laid out in front of him, he'd point up at the cliff from where he just fell, and down at the ground on which he landed. Then he'd use the amazing powers of the human intellect until he understood what just happened to him in terms of the law of gravity. Then he'd pack up his things and he'd walk along until he fell off of the next cliff. Thus the Magician becomes the Fool. Something that comes to mind is the popular folk tale of Isaac Newton napping under a tree when he is struck on the head by an apple and startled awake with an aching temptation to understand what the hell just happened. It is said that the Fool who persists in his folly becomes wise. I think of that statement to be as much of a natural law as gravity itself. The Fool transmutates into the Magician when his capacity for knowledge, for understanding, is called upon by crisis. Then, when it is time to proceed, the active mind subsides, and we move along the path of the present moment with that happy-go-lucky mind of the Fool. One who keeps his faith in folly is truly the Magician, even when playing the part of a fool. Now, one who loses his faith in folly loses his faith in his master, and is doomed to spend eternity as the worst of fools, that fool who thinks himself to be the Magician at all times. We don't have enough energy to be on, always. Sometimes we have to turn off. Now, to master this relationship, this transition, is to realize the so-called skillful means that are described in Zen. To master this is to attain the real faith in the universe.